The metal edge of the chair bit into the back of my knees. I remember gripping my clutch so hard the clasp left a red line across my palm, a mark I'd still see the next morning like a brand. Through the kitchen doorway I could hear the band starting the first dance. 300 people clapping in rhythm on the other side of a wall that smelled like butter and bleach. A server balancing a tray of champagne flutes paused, looked at me sitting there in my navy silk dress among the stacked chafing dishes, and whispered, "Ma'am, I don't think you're supposed to be back here." I smiled at her. Neither do I. Behind me, taped to the wall above a mop bucket, someone had written my table assignment on an index card in my sister's handwriting. Table 0. My name is Renata Cole. I'm 44 years old, and 11 years ago I turned a $6,000 tax refund into what is now a specialty logistics company that moves temperature-sensitive pharmaceuticals across 4 states, Cold Line Freight Solutions. Last year we cleared $3.2 million in revenue. I built it from a folding table in my garage in Ohio, cold calling clinics at 6 in the morning before my daughter woke up for school. My younger sister Delphine is 39. She's never worked a job longer than 8 months. And 2 weeks before her wedding to a man named Grant Ashworth, she asked me for a loan, $45,000, just to bridge some vendor deposits, she said. Family helps family. I wired it the next morning without hesitation, because that's what I believed we were. I flew in from Columbus with a $3,000 dress, a card with $500 cash tucked inside for the newlyweds, and 11 years of history telling me I still had a family worth showing up for. By 6:15 that evening, I was eating rubber chicken standing up next to a walk-in freezer, listening to my own wedding gift being spent on an open bar I hadn't been invited to sit near. I hadn't even seen the seating chart before the ceremony. Delphine had insisted on keeping the reveal a surprise. It's more fun that way, run. I should have known something was wrong when she said it without looking at me. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Delphine glided down a rose petal aisle in a gown that, I would later learn, cost $14,000, nearly a third of what I'd wired her. I cried during her vows. I meant every tear. Then cocktail hour ended, and a wedding coordinator with a clipboard and an apologetic wince walked me not toward the ballroom but toward a service corridor. There was a mix-up with the final head count, she said, not meeting my eyes. Mrs. Ashworth's mother-in-law made some last-minute changes to the +1 allocations. I found my card taped above a mop bucket, 1 folding chair, 1 tray table, a view of the walk-in freezer's condenser fan. I heard Grant's mother, Bitsy Ashworth, before I saw her. Her voice carried through the swinging door in the particular pitch of a woman who has never once considered that she might be overheard. "The sister's fine back there," she was telling another guest, swirling a Chardonnay. "She's not really family. She's Delphine's half-something. And frankly, at a wedding this size we had to draw a line somewhere. Paying guests come first." Paying guests. I stood very still and did the math. I had paid $45,000. I just hadn't been invited to sit down. I didn't cause a scene. I've never once in my life caused a scene. That's not how I win. I smiled. I ate my rubber chicken standing up, and 2 days later, back home in Columbus, I quietly called the venue's events office asking to confirm final numbers for a thank you note list. The coordinator, thinking I was helping Delphine, emailed me the finalized floor chart. There were 14 open seats at table 12. 14. My seat had been removed not for space but on purpose. I pulled my own bank records, the $45,000 wire I'd sent for vendor deposits. I cross-referenced it against wedding vendor invoices Delphine had, weeks earlier, accidentally CC'd me on during a group email thread about flowers. The florist's invoice was $8,200. The caterer's was $19,500. The dress, I'd later confirmed through a boutique receipt Delphine posted, cropped but not cropped enough, to her Instagram story, was $14,000. That's $41,700 accounted for. $3,300 left over. I called Delphine, keeping my voice light, breezy, the voice of a woman who suspects nothing. "Hey, just doing my books for the quarter. Did the vendor deposit ever clear okay?" "Oh my God, yes, totally," she said. It went straight to the venue's escrow account. They hold it for 6 months in case of damages. It's this whole thing with insurance compliance, very standard for venues this size. Escrow account. Insurance compliance. I run a logistics company. I know what real escrow language sounds like. And what Delphine gave me was 3 magazine words stitched together by someone hoping I wouldn't ask a second question. I said, "Oh, that makes total sense, thank you for explaining," and hung up and opened a fresh document titled simply Delphine. 3 weeks later, I flew back to help Delphine settle into married life. Ostensibly. Really, I wanted to be in the house. I was refilling a water glass in her kitchen when I heard her on speakerphone in the next room with Bitsy. "She wired it in like 12 hours, Delphine was saying, laughing. "Didn't even ask a single question. Ren's easy like that. She just wants to feel included, so you dangle the word family, and she writes the check." Bitsy's voice thin and pleased. "Well, it certainly paid for a gorgeous ceremony. Grant's father would have never fronted that kind of money without 12 meetings and a business plan." "Right," Delphine said. "Rich people who grew up poor are the easiest marks in the world. They're so scared of being called cheap they'll bankrupt themselves proving they're not." I stood in that kitchen holding a sweating glass of water, and I felt something in my chest go very quiet and very cold. Not hurt. Past hurt. Something more useful than hurt. 2 months later, Delphine called crying, genuinely crying, or performing it well enough that I couldn't tell the difference anymore, which told me everything I needed to know about how far we'd already drifted. Grant's contracting business, she said, had hit a cash flow snag. Some $28,000 gap on a permit issue. And could I possibly please just this once? I said I'd need to see the permit paperwork first, for my own bookkeeping, taxes and all that. She hesitated a half-second too long, then sent me a PDF. I forwarded that PDF to a permitting clerk I know through my logistics work, a woman named Odessa who processes commercial filings for 3 counties. Odessa called me back in 11 minutes. "Renata," she said, "this permit number doesn't exist. And this letterhead font isn't even the one the county switched to 2 years ago. The document was fabricated." Grant Ashworth, contractor, Delphine's husband of 4 months, had forged a county permit filing to extract $28,000 from me, the same woman he'd let his mother banish to a folding chair by a walk-in freezer. I didn't send the money. I told Delphine I was having a slow quarter myself and needed a few weeks to think about it. Then I opened a second document. I made a decision that week, sitting alone at my kitchen table in Columbus with 2 folders and a cold cup of coffee. I was going to become smaller. Not smaller in fact, smaller in appearance. I've built a company by understanding one unglamorous truth. People underestimate what they've already decided to underestimate. Delphine and Bitsy had already cast me as the naive rich sister who confuses cash with love. I wasn't going to correct that story. I was going to feed it. So the next time Delphine called, I let my voice go soft and a little scattered. "Oh honey, I don't know, business has just been so overwhelming lately. I can barely keep my invoices straight. I might need Grant to help me understand some of my own paperwork sometime. You know how confused I get with numbers when I'm stressed." I started signing off calls with, "I just want everyone to be happy, that's all I ever wanted." Delivered in the exact wounded, grateful for scraps register that Bitsy had already diagnosed me with in that kitchen. I let a photo leak, deliberately through a mutual cousin, of me looking tired and disheveled at my own office, caption nothing, just left to be misread as a woman coming undone. Interior monologue the whole time. Let them think the money tap is loosening because I've gone soft. A guard dog that stopped barking hasn't stopped watching. It's just decided you don't need to know it's still awake. I even attended Sunday dinner at Bitsy's 3 weeks later wearing flats instead of heels, hair a little undone, and let Bitsy pat my hand across the table and say, "You know, Renata, some people just aren't built for the business world the way Grant is. There's no shame in it." I said, "You're probably right," and asked for the potatoes. They needed me pliable, so I let them believe I already was. Here is what 11 years of running a logistics company teaches you that a marketing degree never will. Paper trails don't lie, but people forget you're capable of building them. I set 3 baits. I told Delphine during a call I initiated myself that I was finally ready to help with the permit thing, but that my accountant required the funds to route through a joint escrow document first, just a formality. My CPA's very particular. I sent over a real, notarized loan agreement, drafted by my actual attorney Miles Okafor, stating explicit terms. $28,000, to be used specifically for permit remediation at the address listed on the fraudulent filing, repayable within 18 months, with the borrower's signature affirming the permit's validity under penalty of fraud. Grant signed it. Notarized. 2 witnesses. He just signed a legal document affirming a document that didn't exist. I asked Bitsy sweetly if she'd mind writing up just a little note for the family group chat thanking everyone for wedding contributions. For keepsake purposes, I'm making a scrapbook. I know that sounds silly. Bitsy, flattered to be asked, wrote 3 paragraphs that specifically referenced Renata's generous $45,000 that made the whole event possible, and the additional funds currently earmarked for Grant's business needs. Time-stamped. In writing. In a family chat I was still a member of. I wore, to what I knew would be Delphine's 30th birthday/anniversary dinner 6 weeks out, a blazer with an inner breast pocket, in which sat my phone, recording app running, screen dark, propped against the seam so the microphone faced the table. The night of that dinner, I sat at a restaurant table with 12 people, my phone silently gathering audio against my ribs, and felt it buzz once, gently, hitting 60 minutes of recording. Under the tablecloth, my hand rested flat against my thigh, 2 inches from where the fabric moved with each small vibration. I ordered the salmon. I smiled at my sister across the table. I waited. It was Delphine's actual 30th birthday dinner, though everyone understood it had quietly become a second celebration of how well the newlyweds were doing. Grant having just closed on a truck he couldn't remotely afford on legitimate contracting income. 22 guests. A private room at a steakhouse Delphine chose specifically, I'd learn later, because it was the kind of place Ron would feel out of place ordering from. Bitsy raised her glass early, 3 drinks in. To Delphine and Grant, who understand that real success means knowing how to use what's around you. A ripple of laughter. Grant, grinning, added. And to family members who don't ask too many questions, keep it up, Ron, seriously, you're a gift that keeps giving. More laughter. Someone's fork clinked a glass. Delphine, emboldened, leaned toward me with a smile I recognized from childhood, the one right before she'd blame me for something she'd broken. Actually, she said, loud enough for the table, since we're all here, Ron, we were thinking, since business is clearly fine for you. A pointed look, performative pity. Maybe it's time you helped cover Grant's new equipment loan too. It's only fair. You're part of this family. Or did the folding chair scare you off? The table laughed. Bitsy laughed loudest. I set down my fork. I want to say something, I said, and my voice did not rise. It never does. And I want everyone here to actually listen because I've been very patient, and patience has a bottom. I looked at Grant first. You forged a county permit filing to take $28,000 from me. I know it's fake because I had it checked by an actual county clerk 11 minutes after you sent it. Then you signed a notarized loan agreement affirming that fake permit's validity, under penalty of fraud, with 2 witnesses. I have that document. I have the recording of you admitting to your mother, at the seating table you removed me from, and I quote that I'm easy because I just want to feel included. I turned to Bitsy. You wrote in a family group chat, time-stamped, that the $45,000 I sent made the whole event possible. The same money you told a wedding guest I wasn't real family enough to be paid back for. I turned last to Delphine. I let the pause sit there, the whole table frozen, forks stopped halfway to mouths. You seated me by a walk-in freezer at your wedding after I gave you $45,000 in 12 hours, no questions, because I loved you. And then I heard you tell your mother-in-law that people like me are the easiest marks in the world because we're scared of being called cheap. I reached into my bag and set down a manila folder, the loan agreement, the permit correspondence, a printed transcript, flat on the white tablecloth, next to the birthday cake no one had cut yet. I'm not scared of that anymore. I picked up the folding chair place card I'd kept, laminated from the wedding, the one with my name on it, table 0 scrawled beneath, and I tore it in half slow one clean motion, the sound of it sharper in that silent room than it had any right to be. I've already spoken to my attorney about the forged permit and the notarized agreement. That's not a family matter anymore, Grant. That's fraud. And my attorney has already forwarded the documentation to the district attorney's office in your county. I'm told they take affirmed fraud filings fairly seriously. I stood, smoothed my blazer, the recorder still warm against my ribs from an hour of running. I'm not asking anyone to apologize. I'm telling you what happens now. At that exact moment, as if the universe enjoyed the timing as much as I did, Miles, my attorney who I'd asked to wait outside per plan in case things escalated, stepped into the doorway with a process server beside him. Grant's face went the color of the tablecloth. I picked up my clutch. I did not slam the door on my way out. I never do. I closed it softly the way you close a door on a room you're never coming back into. Within 6 weeks, the consequences arrived in the flat, procedural tone of a life quietly correcting itself. Grant Ashworth was formally charged with document forgery and attempted financial fraud in the second degree. His contracting license, already provisional after 2 prior county violations I hadn't known about until discovery, was suspended pending review. The truck he'd bought on the strength of my supposed second loan was repossessed 9 days after the dinner. Bitsy Ashworth was named in a civil suit I filed alongside the criminal referral, for knowing participation in fraudulent inducement, her own written words, made the whole event possible, used as the plaintiff's Exhibit A. She settled out of court for $12,000 rather than face discovery, a fraction of what she'd have owed, but enough that her garden club, I heard through the same cousin who'd leaked my photo, quietly stopped inviting her to things. Delphine was not criminally charged. She hadn't signed anything, hadn't forged anything, had only laughed at the right moments and spent money that wasn't fully hers. But the civil suit named her too, for the portion of the $45,000 that never went anywhere near vendor deposits or escrow. A judge ordered $16,300 in restitution, payable over 3 years. Her marriage did not survive the district attorney's letter arriving at their shared address. Grant moved out 2 months later, and the divorce filing was public record by spring. I want to be honest about something the story doesn't usually include. I felt no joy watching any of it. I felt relief and I felt tired, the particular tiredness of a person who's been carrying something heavy for longer than they let themselves admit. There was one part one did with a full heart, no calculation in it. The wedding coordinator, the young woman who'd walked me to that folding chair, apology written all over her face the whole time, had been following orders from a bride and a mother-in-law who'd have fired her for refusing. I found out she'd lost her job at that venue anyway, laid off in a restructuring unrelated to the wedding, struggling with a toddler and a lapsed certification. I paid for her recertification course $1,400 anonymously through the training program itself, and left a note that just said, "You didn't do anything wrong." Someone finally noticed. That's the only part of this I'd frame and hang on a wall. It was late November, 7 months after the dinner, when Delphine showed up at my door. It was raining, the cold kind that gets into your collar, and she stood on my porch in a coat that was too thin for the weather, mascara doing the thing mascara does in rain whether or not you're actually crying. No car in the driveway. She said a rideshare had dropped her. Behind her on the step sat one duffel bag. "Ren," she said, and her voice cracked in the place voices crack when they've rehearsed cracking, or when they genuinely have nothing left, and by then I'd stopped being able to tell the difference and stopped needing to. I have nowhere else. Grant took everything in the settlement. Mom won't answer. I just need somewhere to stay for a little while. Please. You're my sister. I stood in the doorway with the porch light throwing a small warm circle around us both, and behind me I could hear my husband, Desmond, quietly setting 2 mugs of tea down on the kitchen counter, giving me the room to do this alone but staying close enough that I knew, the way you know weather is coming, that he was there. "I am your sister," I said. I was your sister at that folding chair too. That never stopped being true. But being your sister doesn't mean being your bank, or your alibi, or the family member you laugh about behind a closed door, and then show up on the porch of when the laughing runs out. I kept my voice even, the same voice I'd used at that restaurant table, because that voice had never needed volume to be heard. You can call a shelter. I'll give you the number. I already looked one up. It's decent. It's 20 minutes from here. I'll pay for a week there myself tonight right now if you want it. But you're not staying in this house. Rin. I mean it with kindness, Delphine. I hope you land somewhere. I hope you figure out who you are without a cosign. But that has to happen without me holding the rope this time. I closed the door. Softly, the way I always do. Desmond handed me a mug of tea without a word and put his arm around my shoulders as we stood in the kitchen listening to the rain against the window. And after a long minute he said, "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, and meant it, maybe for the first time in over a year. "I think I finally am." Here's what I learned, standing in that kitchen by the walk-in freezer with a laminated place card that said Table 0. The people who love you don't need a spreadsheet to make room for you. If someone in your life only finds you valuable when you're paying for the privilege of being there, that's not a family, that's a client relationship with extra guilt attached. Boundaries aren't cruelty. They're just the first time some people have ever heard the word no said calmly. So let me ask you, has anyone in your life ever made you feel like you had to earn a seat at your own family's table? Tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story hit home, hit like, subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the next one.